We have actually a Bicam report that we'd like to ratify today. Mr. President, we are in receipt of the Bicameral Conference Committee report and disagreeing provisions of Senate Bill number 2152 and House Bill number 10301. This is the Teachers Education Excellence Act. Mr. President, with the permission of the body, I move to recognize Chairperson of the Senate panel, Senator Gatchalian, to give us the highlights of the report.
Thank you.
Senator Sherwin Gatchalian is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Esteemed colleagues, good evening. It is my great honor to submit for ratification a copy of the Bicameral Conference Committee report on the disagreeing provisions of Senate Bill number 2152 and House Bill number 10301, also known as the Excellence in Teacher Education Act. After 7 pre-Bicam meetings, the Senate and the House panels have met and discussed to work on a reconciled version of our respective bills on 2 bicameral conference committee meetings held on January 12 and 13 this year. The product of all the time and work dedicated to this bill is a sweeping piece of landmark legislation that will reform and improve the quality of teacher education and training in the country, a significant step forward in addressing the perennial crisis hounding our education system, particularly our basic education sector. Mr. President, 3 international large-scale assessments, the 2018 Program for International Student Assessment, the 2019 Southeast Asia Primary Learning Metrics, and the 2019 Trends in International Mathematics and Science Study have consistently pointed to alarming results. Our learners are failing to master basic competencies and they are being left behind by their peers abroad. While we are dismayed by the fact that our learners are lagging in the academic performance, it is equally alarming to see how low passing rates in our licensure examination for teachers or LET. It is equally alarming to see that most of our teacher education institutions or TEIs are considered worst or poor performing. Between 2010 and 2021, only 36% of secondary education takers passed the LET, while 28% passed the elementary level. Results of the 2019 LET also showed that roughly 4 out of 5 TIs are considered worse or poor performers at the elementary and secondary levels. This means that the schools have passing rates of less than 50%. It does not help that the Department of Education and the Commission on Higher Education, 2 key agencies in the teacher education continuum, are implementing different standards on teacher education. The Department of Education follows the Philippine Professional Standards for Teachers or PPST, while the CHED follows the Policy Standards and Guidelines or PSGs for the teaching profession. According to a paper by the Philippine National Research Center for Teacher Quality, the alignment of PSGs and the PPSTs could not be placed at more than 50%. The DepEd's role is non-existing in the LET, which is administered by the Professional Regulatory Commission. Simply put, these key agencies involved in the teacher education continuum are working in silos, and this has negatively affected teacher education outcomes. Mr. President, the proposed measure before us will strengthen the coordination between the DepEd and the CHED and the PRC by revamping the Teacher Education Council or TEC, which was first created by virtue of Republic Act number 7784. By strengthening the link between relevant government agencies and stakeholders, the TEC can strengthen the link between pre-service and in-service teacher education programs. The TEC will set and mandate basic requirements for education programs to ensure a strong and transparent link between the outcomes of teacher education programs and the professional standards for teachers and school leaders, research and international best practices. The TEC will quality assure these basic requirements, monitor the compliance of TEIs, and ensure that the CHED is implementing them. The TEC will also be identifying, designating, and developing teacher education centers of excellence, or COEs, in strategic places in each region of the country to ensure that these teacher education COEs continue to possess the criteria prescribed in the measure. They will undergo evaluation every 3 years. Lastly, Mr. President, this measure institutionalizes the National Education Academy of the Philippines to provide quality professional development programs on teacher education to in-service teachers, school leaders, and other teaching-related personnel in all public and private basic education institutions. At this point, Mr. President, I would like to thank the different stakeholders who helped us in crafting this measure, the DepEd, the CHED, the PRC, the Technical Education and Skills Development Authority, the National Commission for Culture and the Arts, the National Economic and Development Authority, the Philippine Normal University, the Philippine National Research Center for Teacher Quality, the University of the Philippines College of Education, the Philippine Business for Education, and the Coordinating Council of Private Educational Institutions. Further, Mr. President, let me thank the co-authors and the co-sponsor of the measure, Senator Joel Villanueva, Senator Bong Revilla, Senator Sani Angara, Senator Nancy Binay, Majority Leader Juan Miguel Zubiri, our Senate President Pro Tempore, Senator Ralph Recto. I would also like to extend my deepest appreciation to my fellow conferees at the Bicameral Conference Committee, Senator Joel Villanueva, Senator Bong Revilla, and Senator Pia Cayetano. Ang pagsugpo natin sa krisis sa edukasyon ay nagaganap sa bawat paaralan at sa bawat silid-aralan. Kung nais nating magtagumpay laban sa krisis na ito, mahalaga at napapanahon tiyakin natin may sapat na kakayahan at kaalaman ang mga gurong nagsisilbing gabay sa ating mga kabataan upang makamit nila ang kahusayan. Mr. President, the comprehensive details of the disagreeing provisions are reflected in the joint explanatory statement. With the permission of the body, I move that the said joint explanatory statement on the disagreeing provisions of Senate Bill number 2152 and House Bill number 10301 be read in toto into the record, and that the Bicameral Conference Committee report be ratified. Thank you very much, and good evening to all.
Mr. President, I believe Senator Villanueva also would like to manifest.
Very short.
Please go ahead, Senator Villanueva.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Majority Leader, distinguished colleagues. Since last week, we have been reporting out vital legislative measures that will directly and indirectly affect the state of Philippine education system. It is worth noting, Mr. President, that many of the measures that we seek to amend or revise were products of the 8th and 9th Congresses, including the EDCOM, the CHED Charter, and the Teacher Education Council, which is the subject of this bicameral conference committee report. Mr. President, this is a very clear indication that our educational policies should not be static. They should evolve with the times. As the great educator Isaac Asimov said, education is something that we cannot finish. In critical times like this, Mr. President, change is doubly hard. This Bicam report, which we just ratified, underwent a very rigorous and painstaking process, not because of our current situation, but because we want this bill to bring out excellence in teacher education. Again, through the leadership of our chairman, Senator Win Gatchalian, and our House counterpart, Congressman Romulo, and the dedication and talent of all our technical and legislative staff, this excellence in teacher education bill will solve many of the problems we have in our education system. Guro po ang solusyon sa maraming problema ng ating lipunan. Guro ang sasagip sa krisis sa karunungan. Guro ang huhubog sa mga Pilipinong handa sa mga trabahong naghihintay. Maraming salamat, Ginoong Pangulo, and God bless us all.
Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Mr. President, just an addition, Majority Floor. Let me thank also Senator Rizzo Ontiveros as part of the Bicameral Conference Committee conference.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, for that. We'll put that on the record. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we adopt and ratify the Bicameral Conference Committee report on disagreeing provisions of Senate Bill number 2152 and House Bill number 10301, that the text of the joint explanation be inserted to the records of this chamber.
Any objection? There being none, the Bicameral Conference Committee report on the disagreeing provisions of Senate Bill 2152 and House Bill 10301 is hereby adopted and ratified.